One animal's waste is another animal's treasure. The dung beetle was worshipped by the ancient Egyptians for its apparent fecal-oriented immortality. But modern discoveries have found new reasons to marvel at this little stinky insect. For those that believe in reincarnation, here is one animal that probably won't make their top 10 list. But sometimes you just need to roll up your sleeves and some dung to survive here in life, death, and taxonomy.
Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy. It's your 30 minutes of interesting animal information. I'm Joe.
And I'm Carlos.
Thank you to Cassie Michelle for the creation of our theme song. To hear more of her music, search Cassie Michelle on YouTube. And today we're talking about a poo-poo paladin that rolls with the punches and makes the most out of a smelly situation. But more on that later.
Poo-poo paladin. This one is rank with good nicknames.
Oh, I have a surprise for you.
Oh, are you going to hit me with some nicknames?
I'm going to have you do the nicknames first, but I asked Twitter what their favorite, euphemisms for dung beetles would be.
I'm very interested to see what the answers were. Yeah, so we're doing the dung beetle, but we have got some nicknames to go through. I want to shout out to Brian. As we mentioned before, Brian is the amazing artist for the show. You can see his art on our Facebook or Twitter, and also on ldtaxonomy.com for each episode. It's great, but he also likes to send over a little joke in the file name of the art that he sends, and this one was called It's a Dung Deal. And that got me. We're also going to call it the Great Zamboni, which not only has to do with the fact that it cleans up things, but also because of its species name. We're going to call it the Fecal Finder,
Nice.
the Bowel Bowler,
Good.
and finally the Crappy Cartographer, or the Stinky Cartographer. Which is my favorite level from Halo 1.
Crapper.
Yeah, Cartographer.
Would you like to hear some of what the Twitter sphere had to say?
Yeah. Tell me, Twitter sphere.
So Natalie from Across the Ages podcast, which you heard from last week, just said one roly boy. That's what she called it, and I think that's a reference to we often call things boy.
Boy, like it's a long boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
one roly boy. I like it.
The Nagging Naturalist podcast submitted excellent excrement excavators.
Excrement. I was trying to think of the euphemisms, or not euphemisms, just words for it, and excrement for some reason did not come to my mind.
She said kids enjoy and tend to remember alliteration well, so she tries to use either alliteration or rhymes. So that's where her inspiration for this amazing name came from. And then finally, without further ado, Adolfo sent in one, our friend Adolfo.
Without further ado.
Without further ado.
Do. Oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be one of those bad episodes.
He said, Magisters of Manure.
Magisters of Manure. Mighty Magisters of Manure. Yeah, the Sultan of Swat.
Oh, there's another word you could say. That's enough of that.
Thank goodness.
Let's hear what science has to say about it.
Let's hear it. Taxonomize this poopy boy. This one roly boy.
They're in the kingdom you know, love, and are in the kingdom Animalia.
Mm-hmm.
This is deep taxonomy. We're not ready for this.
Yeah, there's an infraorder, there's a superfamily, there's a subfamily, there's a tribe.
Okay, the phylum. Where's the phylum?
What do you think the phylum is?
Phylum is Arthropoda.
There you go.
And then the class is Insecta.
Yes.
And the order It's Coleoptera. Colon. Superfamily is Scarabia. Wow. 4 vowels in a row. Scarabaeoidae. Scarabaeoidae? Do you think that's it? Scarabaeoidae?
Scarabaeoidae, yeah. That's what I would say. Wow, that is 4 vowels in a row.
The family is Scarabaeidae.
Mm-hmm.
The genus is Scarabaeus. And then the species is Scarabaeus zambezianus. Appropriate.
That didn't even register in my brain until you just said it that way. I was thinking
Zambinianus.
I was thinking Zambezianus.
Zambezianus?
Yeah, that was like my first thought of pronouncing.
Binomial names are never that like concise
I
with
don't
their
know.
pronunciation.
We wouldn't know it's Latin or Greek, but it just reminded me of Zamboni, and Zambonis go and clean things up.
I just had the text to speech thing read it and it said Zambezianus.
Zambezianus. That's another way to say it without smirking.
Well, I think it's appropriate in this case.
So it's Scarabaeus zambezianus, or Zambezianus. Right. But since we're in the business of naming things, cue the Quiplash music. It's time for critter groups. I was just listening to an older episode the other day, and I was thinking, I was like, this music sounds so like familiar, and it reminds me of the waiting music for Quiplash. It's kind of like
it just reminded me of like a quiz show or like a.
It's like elevator salsa.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good. So anyway, yes, it's time for critter groups, the part of the show where I ask you, Joe, a question, and that question is the same every time. What is the collective noun for this animal, or what is the name of a group of this animal, or what is a term of venery? So there isn't an official one. It's another one of those without an official one. So you're going to have to guess which one I found on shoutingatseahorses.com.
Don't do that. Although if you're in their territory, it probably wouldn't be that loud.
Yeah, you'd probably just be just blowing bubbles at them. So which one of these did a user on shoutingatseahorses.com think is the best or most appropriate term of venery for the dung beetle? Is it A, a dollop of dung beetles, B, a pile of dung beetles, C, a ball of dung beetles, or D, a dump of dung beetles?
I like all of these. I'm going to go with the ball.
Final answer?
I'm going to go right on the nose.
It's incorrect. I mean, as incorrect as guessing what somebody said one time on the internet can possibly be. The answer is dollop.
I can't believe that there's no term of venery for a dung beetle.
Yeah, I couldn't. Maybe I should have looked at scarabs.
Oh yeah, I bet there's a scarab one. But in the meantime, would you like to hear it described?
Yeah, how about you tell us what it looks like?
The dung beetle is a round beetle with black and brown coloration. Like all insects, their bodies are separated into 3 distinct sections. They have a horseshoe-shaped head that often sports spurs or horn-like protrusions. Much like their kin, the the Hercules beetle with the giant like pincer thing?
Yes.
Yeah, that's also in the scarab family. The beetle's thorax is covered by a piece of plate mail, or plate armor called a pronotum.
Same.
Right, same. And then they have wings that are also covered by more armor. Do you remember what wing coverings on beetles are called? It's a very nice word.
No, I do not remember.
It's elytron or elytron, E-L-Y. What does she? Elytron. That's what the text-to-speech says.
Elytron. I don't. It's been a little while since we've done a beetle, so I don't remember. But that's the hard covering shell over their wings.
Yes.
That's the part that Dill, I think his name is, from The Bug's Life, is trying to hide the little ants in. The Hercules beetle.
Sure. But anyway, that brings us to wondering how big these things are. So that brings us to the Measure Up segment. Welcome to the beloved Measure Up segment, the official listener's favorite part of the show. The part of the show when we present the animal size and dimensions in relatable terms through a quiz that's fun for the whole family. It's also part of the show that's introduced by you when you send an audio of yourself saying, singing, or chittering the words Measure Up into ldtaxonomy@gmail.com. We had a couple good weeks of Measure Up intros, but we don't have any this week, which means we get to hear from an animal and Carlos has to guess what it is.
Poop.
Exactly. Well, without further ado, we
already made that joke.
Listener's favorite part of the show. Is that A, a horned Passalius beetle, B, a giant elephant beetle, C, a Hercules beetle, or D, a rhinoceros beetle?
Hercules beetle, final answer.
Final answer.
Yes.
That is incorrect.
Darn it. It was the only one that I was 100% sure is an actual beetle.
Oh, man, I was sure you would get it because I found a video of a giant elephant beetle on YouTube, and it said giant elephant beetle stridulation. So I was like, yes, this is what I want. And then I started writing the other ones. Hercules beetle, rhinoceros beetle, beetles I could remember that were in this kind of group of big beetles. And then I watched the video, and you cannot hear any stridulation. You can only hear what sounds like a jet engine in the background.
This one was pretty bad too. It was mostly background noise.
Yeah. But then I found this other one, Horned Passalius. So I thought, like, the most obscure of these beetles is Horned Passalius. And I even stumbled over saying it. So I figured that one would stick out like a sore thumb.
I thought that was something that you just went
looked up on a list of beetles.
Yeah, and we had already talked about the Hercules beetle, so it was the only one I could be sure and not look foolish by going, there is no elephant beetle.
There is.
You foolish,
all of these are real beetles,
man. Well, now I assume that, but I didn't 45 seconds ago.
I didn't know the rhinoceros beetle was a real beetle because I was just like, elephant, rhinoceros. I'm going to make up a beetle.
It's a hippo beetle. There's a lion beetle.
I tried to find a stag beetle, so that would just be a bunch of animal type beetles. But yeah, I couldn't find it.
You could probably make an anime about that.
I think we used a Hercules beetle flying sound, which I found a video of, but we used it before.
Okay.
But let's talk length. So there are so many types of dung beetles, and I couldn't find any specific information about this very, very obscure, no Wikipedia page having beetle we chose.
I could find lots of information about it, just not general info about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of like very specific because it's got some cool major facts. But so they can be between 5. The dung beetles in general can be between 5 and 30 millimeters, or 0.2 to about 1.2 inches. I think scarab beetles can get even bigger because of the Hercules beetle, which can be like 3 inches long.
Yeah, it's the biggest beetle in the world.
But we're gonna go with 1.2 inches, 33 or 30 millimeters. How many dung beetles go into the length of the biggest Nile crocodile ever? I think we might have talked. We've done that. You can find our episode on the Nile crocodile, and I think we might have talked about this particular crocodile before.
Is it the one that eats Dustin Hoffman at the end of Hook? Spoiler alert.
Kind of, because here's the hint. To hear more, I already said that. The largest Nile crocodile ever is the infamous man-eater Gustav
Oh, we have definitely talked about Gustav.
from Burundi, who is rumored to kill hundreds of people. So we've talked about this before. We might have even said how big he is. He's thought to have been killed in 2019, by the way.
I'm going to say 24 feet long. So I'm going to say 240 beetles.
240 beetles, final answer.
Uh-huh.
Well, the correct answer is 200 beetles.
Oh, it's a short crocodile.
Well, you might be right. We only have eyewitness testimony, and a researcher a journalist in the field said that estimated it to be 20 feet long.
Oh, okay. At first,
and he may be as old as 60 years old.
Well, he was.
We don't. Well, it's unconfirmed. His death is merely a rumor.
Maybe his existence is a rumor.
No, there are definitely confirmed kills by a 20-foot croc. And all you have to do is say that croc's name is Gustav, and then Gustav exists.
It could be. It's like Tale of Two Cities. Gustav is just the name of a crocodile insurrection group. Trying to overthrow the bourgeoisie of the human bourgeoisie.
Of the Burundi? Yeah. Of the people of Burundi. The weight. Let's talk about that. Scarab species can weigh between 100 micrograms to 3.5 ounces or 99 grams, which is quite hefty for a bug. That span is incredible. 100 micrograms? That's half the weight of a snowflake. What kind of tiny beetle is out there? I'm upset about it. It's such a huge span. But we're going to go
But it's all within like this whole family of...
Yeah.
Or infraorder even of beetles.
But a beetle half the weight of a snowflake is so small. But I guess it's possible. There's probably some ladybugs that are quite light.
It's like the difference between the smallest shark and the largest shark.
Yeah. Well, so what I did was I found the weight of an Egyptian scarab beetle, which I think is a dung beetle. And it could weigh around 0.07 ounces. Which is 2 grams.
Okay.
So how many dung beetles would a burrowing owl have to eat its weight in dung beetles?
Hey, burrowing owl. That's the FAU mascot.
Well, the FAU mascot is just simply the owl.
But we have burrowing owl.
Burrowing owls on the campus.
We've talked about this.
Yeah. I mean, a burrowing owl is just not very intimidating because it's quite small.
Well, when you make a whole mascot out of it, you can make anything look at least a little bit intimidating.
But when they bring an owl to the game, it's usually a bigger species of owl.
Well, like we got the Miami Dolphins, and dolphins do not look intimidating at all, so it's fine.
And Owsley the owl usually has horns of some kind, or like an owl does.
That's true.
Like
or like a screech.
Burrowing owls.
All right.
Burrowing owls don't have that. But anyway, here's a hint. Burrowing owls in Peru have been observed setting traps with defecation in order to attract dung beetles. There are both old and New World dung beetles. So burrowing owls aren't eating the ones we're talking about today. But
crab traps. The little helpful robot in Borderlands 2. How many ounces? The Egyptian one, you said 0.012?
Just 0.07.
0.07.
2 grams.
400. That's my final answer.
400 beetles, final answer.
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not even going to do the math.
The answer is 85 beetles.
Okay, well, fine.
Burrowing owls are around 6 ounces or 170 grams.
In my head, I was like, I bet you 4 ounces is a good guess for their weight. And then I was trying to do 0.07 into 4. No, I'm just going to say 400.
I mean, 6 ounces seems quite light, even for a small owl. But, I mean, they are birds. They're designed to be light.
And ounces are way heavier than you think they are.
That's true.
Or I think they
170 grams. Are you ready for some fast facts before we get into the major fact?
Mm-hmm.
Dung beetles are scarab beetles that were revered in ancient Egypt. The dung beetle lives up to its name, exclusively eating the fecal matter of other animals. One animal's waste is another's treasured truffles.
Okay. Those are the first words in my intro.
Wait, all of that, the full sentence?
No, one animal's waste is another animal's treasure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, treasured truffles, though.
Treasured truffles.
They locate these butt fays with their acute sense of smell.
That was so good. That was good.
Well, strap in, because there's more.
Ooh.
Some smaller species get their feces from fecal factories directly. They'll find a reliable friend like a cow and hitch a ride until the cow drops fresh baked goods. When the beetles find a choice morsel, they'll roll it into a ball so they can have a meal on wheels. When it's time to court, females will select a male based on the size of his carapacell.
All right, that's a little bit of a stretch.
When the pair comes together, the female will hitch a ride on the chocolate snowball, and the male will push the poo with his back legs while his head faces the ground.
Chocolate snowball.
Dung beetles live in several different environments, including desert, grassland, farmland, and forests. One thing that all these things have in common are they're places where you might find ejected poo. There are both old and new world dung beetles. These manure-loving bugs can be found on every continent except Antarctica. That's a word I'll never be able to say correctly.
I don't even put the C in there. It's just Antarctica.
Antarctica. However, they prefer temperate weather and avoid hot and cold extremes. These bowel movement movers actually serve an important ecological purpose. They move, eat, and sometimes bury manure, which is important both agriculturally and in forests. Poo helps enrich soil, which is something farmers and gardeners know all too well after a smelly trip to the Home Depot. Poo eaters also help recycle nutrients. Just be glad you don't have to be one, you know?
Mm-hmm. I am very glad.
Leave it to the beetle.
Leave it to Beetle.
But that's all I got.
Wow. For those of you for whom puns are physically painful, I apologize. But for everyone else, I hope you enjoyed that. All right, so the major fact is called polarizing poo, which is if Winnie the Pooh got on Twitter and had
hot takes,
hot takes and political opinions.
Hot takes and hot snakes,
where he just thinks we should all be more exuberant. So, like you said, they like to eat excrement. So when a hapless gazelle leaves a fresh pile of dinner on the savannah, there is a tiny but intense race to claim some of that delicious prize. So dozens of beetles will be teaming over the spoils, so getting the dropping on the competition is vital. Many insects, including most dung beetles in particular, they will take off a piece of it, roll it up into a ball, and then, like you said, face away from the ball and push it. So the question is, how on earth do they know where they're going? They are not looking where they're going. They're just pushing a ball with their back legs. And dung beetles, along with a lot of other insects, use polarized light to orient themselves and to find their way to their dens or wherever they're going to bury their DoorDash. So I won't go into the actual the nitty-gritty physics of polarized light because I had to type in explain polarized light for kids into YouTube in order to understand it. But suffice to say that most light travels in a beam, and the beam shines out in all directions. But something can happen if it interacts with things like atmospheric particles or like a specific material that has slits in a certain angle, to make the light that passes through invisible to anyone who is not looking at it at a very specific angle. And that light is called polarized light. And so, for example, when sunlight hits like the surface of some water, it will reflect back as partially polarized light, but not completely. So when you put on glasses that are polarized, they have, for lack of a better term, slits, millions of them, that make it so that it filters out all of the other light except for the polarized light, so that it'll filter out the glare, and then you can see further into the water and see fish and stuff if you're fishing. So a lot of insects use this. They can see specifically polarized light, and that, because it can only be seen from one angle, or seen better from one angle for them, they can always tell where they are based on the position of the polarized sunlight. The great Zamboni, however, can use not sunlight. Well, it can use sunlight, but it can also use moonlight, which is 1/1,000,000th the strength of sunlight. And I know there's a joke somewhere in there with mooning, but I didn't put the pen to paper on that one. So researchers confirmed this, that so they angled up some polarized moonlight at this beetle, and this isn't just all dung beetles. This is specifically Scarabaeus zambesianus. Let's see, Leviosa. So they would angle the moonlight at the beetle as it was pushing its dinner, and wherever they angled the moonlight, the beetle would correct its course and go toward the moonlight. So they could kind of guide it wherever they wanted it to go, or they wanted, yeah. And so this is due to an extremely sensitive ring around the beetle's eye that can detect the incredibly weak polarized moonlight and follow it in a straight line. So since it's the only animal that we know of that can do this, it allows it to get a jump on the competition and forage during twilight and nighttime hours, because all other dung beetles are incapable of navigating during without sunlight. So if an animal does its BM in the PM, this particular species of beetle will be able to get in on the IPO before it hits the market when the trading starts the next day. There you go, kids. There's a metaphor you can work with. No, so like, yeah, if an animal poos during the night, this beetle does not have to wait until morning to grab it and bring it back to its den. It can find it as long as there's moonlight. If it's a cloudy night, ostensibly they wouldn't be able to do it. However, there is a Wired article that I read, and I'm not 100% sold on how scientific Wired is, but it mentioned a study where the beetles could still navigate on moonless nights. And then during a moonless night, they put tiny blindfolds on the beetles, and only then did they have trouble finding their way. So when it was cloudy or the moon was just not out, when it was that time of the month, they could still navigate somehow. So they were thinking maybe it's not the moon that's moonlight they're able to do this with. The article suggested that they're using polarized light from stars in the Milky Way, which I'm not sure about. But that's just what the article suggested. That would be incredible and very unique if they could use the very, very faint light. Not only is that light super faint, but it's also the polarized aspect of that light would be even fainter. So it's possible, but I think unlikely. I think it's more likely that they maybe use a combination of something like magnetism, like homing pigeons, and the polarized light to navigate. But you mentioned earlier that the ancient Egyptians would worship these beetles or venerate them. And by the way, every time I type the word beetles, my Google Doc wants me to change it to Beatles, like the band. I'm like, no, I can write about multiple bugs. Thank you. Without talking about John Lennon. So the reason why they would, you think like, why would such a powerful ancient civilization worship the smelliest of all bugs? But the reason is that they would just observe the dung beetle, and they would watch it push this ball, and they would assume that the ball was an egg, and because the beetle would seemingly on its own push the ball, bury it, and then dig down deep, and then so the adult would dig down, and then a juvenile would pop up because the eggs had hatched and all that stuff. So they thought the scarab was perpetuating this cycle of immortality, where it had its own egg and could self-fertilize and then turn itself into, and then be reborn as a young, strapping young dung beetle. And so the scarab represents the infinite cycles of the sun, or represented the infinite cycles of the sun to the Egyptians. But they were wrong. The reality is that the female scarab would actually dig down in there and lay her eggs, and then the eggs would hatch and they'd eat their way out of the the Kinder egg.
Kinder surprise, literally. It's a surprise full of Kinders.
Yeah, it's about as close, about as apropos as possible. But yeah, so that's the not just the dung beetle, but this particular dung beetle. It navigates using polarized moonlight, the only animal in the world we know of to do this. And that's all I got.
That's all I got.
All right. That was the dung beetle. So for you out there in Podcastia, move quickly. Get a leg up on the competition. And guide your poop by the silvery light of the waxing moon, like the dung beetle here in Life, Death, and Taxonomy.
Hey Taxonomy Titans, thanks for listening to the episode. Just a few quick things. As always, reviews and social media engagement are greatly appreciated, but recommending the podcast to friends is the best way to help us grow. If you'd like some LDT flavored merch, check out teespring.com/stores/taxonomy-tees. That's it. Thanks for listening all the way to the end.
Life, Death, and Taxonomy is my favorite in the world podcast.
I'm so sorry to all the parents that now their kids have a lot of words and puns to just talk about and use.
I didn't know if I could if crap was okay to say, but
yeah, it's been. I remember that being kind of a taboo thing.
Taboo.
Or a taboo thing.